Hey folks, welcome back to Max Nafe Horsemanship. Gonna have a little chat today, but before I get started, hear me out. Don't stop the video just because I'm gonna talk, okay? I know people do that. See, actually it was a few years back, I had a bit of a criticism from one of my viewers. They didn't like the fact I talked so much. They said, well, stop talking and show us something. Well, I know that, seeing things happening is more entertaining and it probably gets you more views on your videos, that sort of thing. But fact of the matter is, yeah, I talk a lot. I do. But there's a reason for it. It's because, well, the other videos that are probably more entertaining on other channels, I don't think they talk enough. Because there's an awful lot of stuff that going on that you don't know about. You don't understand. You don't understand the little intricacies and subtleties to it, because they don't explain that stuff. They just show you what they're doing, and well, they kind of sort of explain, but not in great detail. And there's a couple of things I want to talk about today that they're interconnected, the two things, and they're topics that I think are pretty important and somewhat inspired by somebody else. So I'm going to talk about them a little bit. Now, there's a gentleman out there that I'm aware of that I think is pretty darn good. Now, he's an author, a horseman, and he's a fan of a form of martial arts, a Japanese form called Aikido, I believe it is. And unlike many, it doesn't teach you 20 ways to kill somebody, it teaches you 20 ways to keep from being killed. It's much more defensive than offensive. And years ago I heard that he combined this Aikido with his horsemanship, and I thought that sounded really weird, sounded strange. Martial arts and horsemanship, what the heck are they? But then I started thinking about it, and it made total sense, because pretty much all forms of martial arts, what I know of, are largely about calmness, self-control, and using the energy that's there to your benefit. And I thought, you know what, that concept would fit so perfectly with horsemanship, because that is exactly the same thing you have to do in good horsemanship. Is you have to be calm, you have to have self-control, and take advantage of the situation to your benefit. Use the energy that's there in, well, either you or the horse, whatever, it doesn't matter. That's not important. What is important, though, is a little bit about this guy. Now, like I said, at first, I really liked the concept of blending this martial arts with the horsemanship. That really made a lot of sense when you think about it. But he is also an author. Now, I don't know for sure, because I watched a recent interview where, well, he's not a young man. He's probably a little older than me. And he has written, at that time, 16 books, and maybe even more now. But I am ashamed to say I've never, ever read one of his books. I'm ashamed to say that. But what I will tell you is that some of the titles were just phenomenal. I mean, I fell in love with the titles to the point where I think I better go get a couple of his books and read them. Because one of them in particular, and I believe it was an older one, has a concept in it that I think is just paramount to good horsemanship. And the title alone is, well, how shall we say it, worth the price of admission? It's worth its weight in gold. You could elaborate just on the title, and it would be just amazing. The title of that book was Consider the Horse. Now, in a recent interview that I watched, he actually explained a little bit about how that title came about. Now, I suspect that was one of his older books. It started off when he was a young man. Now, just a little backstory on him. He didn't grow up with horses either, but he did start experiencing horses from a fairly early age, where he lived in the country. One of his neighbors had some horses, and he started going out to see them and petting them because he was attracted to horses. And he eventually did meet the owner of the horses, and, well, he became his mentor. And the man turned out to be a fairly gentle sort that would do things with horses in a very respectful way. And, well, Mark, although, like I said, I don't know everything about him, but what I do know about him, I think his style and mine are very similar. And a little story is that when he was quite young, because, like I say, he started hanging out there about age 10, and one day they went to go get some hay for the horses from the neighbor's place, and he hopped into Walter's truck. Walter was his mentor. And they get to the neighbor's place, and at the time, they just happened to be starting some horses. And, well, they had this horse tied to a snubbing post, and they were trying to get a saddle on it, and the horse was having a fit. And, they were very old school in how they did things. And without even turning to look at Mark, Walter says to him, "What do you think the horse, how do you think the horse feels about that?" And that is where the beginning of, well, what ended up becoming a book started, was consider the horse. How does the horse feel about it? And that's something that you need to consider in absolutely everything you do, is how does the horse feel about it? If you've just watched my Baby Steps series, you will see in real time how I dealt with the horses. Always gentle and patient and calm. I never pushed them to their limits. I never had a meltdown with them or anything like that, except one when I was trying to get it in a trailer. She'd get a little silly sometimes. But other than that, we didn't, I always considered the horse, how it felt. I always wanted to make its time with me a good thing, so that, well, in the future, the horse would want to be with me, and it'd make it much easier to teach it things in the future, because it wasn't scared of me. It didn't go, "Oh my God, here's the guy that's going to traumatize me and scare the heck out of me," and all this stuff. No, we didn't do any of that. And to this day, I can walk out into the pasture, and the two horses I've been working with, and one other that I really haven't had much to do with, they all come running to me. But they all stop at a respectful distance and everything else too. So they enjoy being with me. They know who I am, and they know what I represent to them, and it's a good thing. Okay, so that's one of the concepts that I believe is, like I say, I didn't read the book, but the title kind of says it all. Consider the horse. Everything that you're doing, think about how does the horse feel about it. Very important. Another one of the books that he wrote is one entitled "A Good Horse is Never a Bad Color." And that's a title that I think we can run with. We could take that one a long ways, go a lot further than just the title, and not limiting it to just color. Because as humans, when we desire to purchase a horse, we want a certain color, a certain size, a certain breed, certain conformation, all these things. And, well, none of those things guarantee you're going to get a good horse. And I know for a fact that people will spend many, many thousands of dollars on a horse simply because of its bloodlines, can be completely untrained and everything else, and they buy this little baby for many, many thousands of dollars because somewhere back in its history, on its papers, Man of War, Doc Barb, whatever, I pick a name, some famous horse that was renowned for its abilities was in there, and they buy that. They spend that money because bloodlines, registration, all that good stuff. And there's no guarantee that you're going to get a good horse, because, well, it may be a genetic throwback to some defect in the bloodline where, the horse ends up manifesting some genetic disorder, or maybe some kind of physical disability, or who knows what. The horse may wind up not even being rideable. And you've spent many thousands of dollars on this horse that isn't worth the price of meat. And I hate to say that, but that quite often happens. And another guy, he was talking about the curse of the pretty horse. How people will go out and buy a horse because of its appearance, the color, or stuff like that. And they get it home and they start working with it, and it turns out to be a basket case. And they can't do a thing with. Well, part of this goes back to the title of the other book I was talking about, Consider the Horse. Because regardless of the color, the breed, or anything like that, how that horse turns out is largely up to you, and how you treat it, how you train it, how you handle it. It's up to you. A good horse is never a bad color. There's nothing that says that a horse is going to be a certain thing. And I think I'm going to go there. I'm going to talk about breeds, because there's one breed in particular that the stereotype just drives me nuts is Arabians. A lot of people consider them to be hot horses. There's no such thing as a hot horse. Arabians are hot-blooded, which means they have more blood cells carrying oxygen to the muscles, gives them more endurance. That's all. It's a physical trait that allows them more endurance. It has nothing to do with behavior. But so many people out there think that an Arab is going to be a hot horse, which, again, there is no such thing. And, the horse becomes their expectations. If they expect that horse to be a hot horse, well, that's kind of what's going to wind up happening. And it goes back to consider the horse. If you treat it nicely, if you treat it gently, you're going to get a good horse. And I have personal experience with some Arabians that were just astonishingly calm, quiet horses. My beginner horse, the first horse I ever rode, was a half Arab, half thoroughbred. I didn't know the stereotypes of those two breeds at the time. I didn't think nothing of it. I got on her and rode her. And she was great. Was she ridiculous because of either of those breeds? No. She was an awesome horse. And in another one not long ago, I was exercising for a lady, and he was a purebred registered Arab. And, to give you an idea of his personality, that was her beginner horse. That wasn't the only horse she had, but that was her first one. And I would exercise him because she didn't ride him anymore. And there was one day I had him out in the yard, and I happened to have a lead and halter on him when the vet showed up to take a blood sample from him for whatever, I don't recall why. And, this is how predominant some of these stereotypes are. Even the vets believe them, because after she drew blood off this horse and he just stood there and didn't even flinch, she looks at me with this puzzled look and she goes, "Are you sure he's an Arab?" Yeah, he was. But that was an example of, what can be. The horse doesn't have to be a nutcase. It's up to you. And you can take a horse. One of the best horses I ever had was one that was given to me. Didn't cost me a penny. If I was out shopping for a horse, believe me, I wouldn't have looked twice at her. She was the wrong color, wrong breed, wrong size, wrong conformation. Everything was wrong. Everything was wrong. But she was a good horse. And I learned a lot from that one. Much of what you've seen recently in my videos is a result of that little horse, because she was that good. And she taught me some things that no human could teach me, because she was such a unique personality that I had to adjust myself to her needs and accommodate them. So good horse is never a bad color. Not a bad breed, bad size, bad conformation, bad anything. No. And the best horse that you're ever going to have might even be something you get for free or dirt cheap. But as I said, the two titles of those books, I believe they go together, because if you consider the horse and you modify your horsemanship to accommodate the horse, you can take virtually any horse and turn it into a good horse. And, I guess that's pretty much the end of my rant for today. There was probably a few other things I'd thought about throwing in previously, but I think we'll quit there, because I know darn well that most of you don't have the patience for long videos where I do nothing but talk. But this is important stuff, how you treat the horse, and, that creates the good horse that could be just about anything. You don't have to go broke buying a registered purebred horse of certain bloodlines. And I know people do it. I know for a fact, there's actually one of the youngsters I was working with in that previous series. They were actually opposite ends of the spectrum in that respect. Is the one was actually purchased before it was even born because of its breeding. The other one was an oops baby. A lady had bought a mare. I got it home, didn't even know it was pregnant, and all of a sudden one day she looks out and there's a baby in the pasture out with the other horse. And eventually she ended up, because of lack of skills and ability, decided the best thing to do was sell it, and she sold it reasonably cheap, and that's how it ended up here. So I've been working with both ends of the spectrum, even just recently in the baby steps video, and I'm not even going to tell you which one is which. But those two horses, opposite ends. One is specific breeding that was purchased before it was even born, and the other one, unknown breeding. It was purchased relatively cheap. The other one, I don't even know how much they paid for it, but I know it wasn't cheap. Anyhow, so that is kind of sums things up for today is you get what you create, and it is done by considering the horse. And a good horse is never a bad color. Have a good day.